Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you with an episode of Table for 3. I have lost track of what episode number this is, but it's very early in the run. A very good episode entitled WCW Legends. Sitting down to what looked like dinner, maybe it was lunch, with Sting, DDP, and Vader. This was obviously shot WrestleMania 31 weekend. This one, they ate a little bit, which does distract me during the show, but it wasn't as distracting as that first episode with Mean Gene, Mr. Wonderful, and Roddy Piper. But this was a really good episode with I don't know. It's funny to me as Luger, Vader, and Sting sat down. The very early topic of conversation was Sting and his WWE WrestleMania debut. You know, does he have butterflies? Everyone's congratulating him. You know, Vader is saying that this is that he saw it coming. DDP puts it as Sting is the girl that Vince could never get. And Sting's going to be wrestling on the biggest stage against Triple H, one of the biggest stars in WWE. This is the big deal for WCW and its legacy. It's looked at as sort of like the last guy coming in. And, you know, Sting had, these questions of whether WWE would put him over, would they make him a big deal, or would they just sort of use him to use him and then just, throw him away? As, Sting said in his documentary that he has these doubts of, does Vince really want me, or does Vince just want to undermine WCW, to say that we took away one of your stars, and then once he gets here, just sort of waste him away in the middle of nothing. But Sting went on to have a good match at WrestleMania 31. There was a lot of bells and whistles. There was a lot of smoke and mirrors with the NWO, with WCW, everybody coming into the match. But I think that played into them having such a match, to be able to see an NWO versus DX face off, and something that we never got during the Monday Night War. And that's what this match actually was the Monday Night War played out. Too bad that it was in 2015, but I think when everybody was watching this at WrestleMania 31, whether if you were there live or whether if you were, watching it on pay-per-view, it was like one of those times when you just, break down the walls of disbelief. You really did believe you were back in 1996 and 1997. You wanted to believe that this wasn't Hogan with a bad back and a bad hip. You wanted to believe that, Kevin Nash wasn't about to tear his quad, and you really wanted to see these guys go at it when, Shawn Michaels threw that huge surprise super kick and things like that. But fun times. Once they started talking about WCW, you can tell that, the WCW, Eric Bischoff and the whole cast and crew of WCW Nitro, all of the roster of wrestlers, they really did beat WWE. But, now that the war is over, now that, everyone's moved on, we're in 2015, Diamond Dallas Page is talking about what WCW means to the WWE Network. Finally, they're getting their day in the sun. Finally, they're getting put over because of the fact that, WCW did beat WWE in the war for 2 years. That was a long time ago. And obviously, there was separate little battles every Monday night over who was going to have the better show, who was going to be getting more ratings, who was going to be making more money, this, that, and the other. But it's almost like DDP doesn't realize that it's 2015 and WCW's out of business. He's still trying to live off that legacy that was years and years and years ago when WCW closed down in I guess that would be 2000. Or was it 2001? I can't remember what year it was, but it was one or the other. And, they shut the doors. Everything was sold to Vince, or everything was given away. For DDP, he went on to wrestle in WWE as, the Stalker, Diamond Dallas Page. He had the match against The Undertaker. I think everybody remembers how bad those vignettes were of him stalking Undertaker's wife, Sarah. Maybe some people might remember his match against Christian at WrestleMania, but I don't think many people really remember DDP after the days of WCW closing down. Nothing to knock this guy. I mean, when I think of DDP as of right now, I think of DDP Yoga more than anything else. there was a lot of topic conversation at this table. They talked about, Sting, joining WWE. They talked about, the Monday Night War and Eric Bischoff sort of, being that guy. The one thing that I laughed at about this is that, Sting brought up the fact that Ted Turner was the backer of WCW from the days he bought it and put it on TBS and entitled it World Class Championship Wrestling when he bought the NWA Wrestling. And, he would come in and he would meet the boys every once in a while and he'd say, I like you guys, I'm behind you. All these suits are sitting upstairs with me in the office and they're telling me to get rid of this wrestling crap, but I like you guys, I'm sticking with you. I got some deep pockets and we'll be okay. It's always been, told that Ted Turner sort of had this wrestling because it was big time ratings for TBS and he didn't want to lose it. Some people say that he's a wrestling fan, but the thing that always comes to my mind, if Ted Turner was such a big wrestling fan, did Ted Turner ever try to make an offer to buy WCW? Just because of the Time Warner, AOL, and everything merged together, Ted Turner still had a lot of money, and Vince McMahon bought WCW for what was not a lot of money. Did Ted Turner even try to make a call to say, hey, I'll own this on my own outside of everything else, or did he just see the writing on the wall that TBS and TNT were no longer going to be carrying wrestling? They didn't want to be known as the wrestling networks anymore, and just know that with no television, there was going to be nowhere for this company to go, and it wasn't going to be able to survive, sort of like Eric Bischoff and his people did. I don't know. There's those fun little clips of Ted Turner sitting ringside, watching WCW. I think he was only there once, maybe twice at the most. He did the skits with Hogan versus Flair with the contract signing, trying to help get that over, and he did some things. It's sort of like when I remember Ted Turner, going to the Braves games when he was the owner of the Braves, and there's always the clips of Ted Turner falling asleep at the Braves game. So we don't even really know if Ted Turner was that big of a wrestling fan or if he just saw this was something that he could make some money on. So he just bought it and he had it in this big catalog of everything that he owned. And Turner had deep, deep pockets back in the day. Fun stuff. The topic of conversation got a little silly at the table when the guys were all trying to talk about how, what their biggest moments of WCW was. Sting said it was hard for him to, put a stamp on what was his best moment, whether if it was the match against him and Hogan at Starrcade. But the best thing about it is when he just, blurted out the White Castle of Fear, which immediately Vader knew what he was talking about, and Vader got very, very embarrassed. And DDP didn't know what the hell was going on. This was something that he really didn't remember. Of course, this is, one of those stupid pay-per-view skits that WCW would do, where it was almost like they were filming a movie in order to try and sell you a pay-per-view. Much like, DDP and Sting getting blown up in the boat. But Sting also brought up his, glorious day with RoboCop, which I think he is very embarrassed about still to this day, even though fans of WCW remember this great as one of the most awesome moments. But anybody inside of the wrestling business knew that there was huge limitations of RoboCop. Basically, your RoboCop, because of the way the suit was all made up, he couldn't climb steps, he couldn't get into the ring. Basically, once he was vertical, that was the only thing he could do. He couldn't, bend over to slide into the ring or anything like that. I'm sure that when WCW thought about RoboCop coming into WCW, this guy was going to hit the ring. He was going to be able to hit the ropes, throw some clotheslines, maybe a big boot. We were going to be able to see a big moment from him. But honestly, the one thing that I thought about when I finally saw the RoboCop match, when I was a kid, was immediately when I think of RoboCop, I think of him, going down, pulling out that gun that he held in his leg. And why didn't RoboCop just start shooting? I mean, that's what he does in the movies. Anytime there's anything bad going on, he just starts shooting people. But he does not do it inside of a WCW ring. So, I don't know. This was a fun one. Honestly, I'm really looking forward to more of these coming down. It's almost like a miniature podcast or maybe like a miniature shoot interview. I can tell that I think they're sort of coached before they go in there. Don't say this, don't say that. Because there was a point when DDP wanted to say wrestlers, and you can tell that he was trying to find another term that he was supposed to be able to say, but he just got to the point when he was like, forget it. Just said wrestlers and just let it go. But, you know, what else are you going to get when you have these old guys that are veterans out there? You know, I love DDP. I love Vader. I love Sting. I've had a chance to meet all three of these guys. I met Vader for the first time at WrestleMania Access. He wasn't the most glorious guy to meet, but, you know, I got to knock him off the list. DDP, I got an awesome picture with him. He's very flamboyant when you meet him. He loves meeting fans. He wants to make sure that, you know, if you get a picture with this guy, it's going to be great. Just ask Luke about that one. And, of course, I met Sting twice. I met him once at the Bound for Glory deal, and I met him once for free at WrestleCon. And both of those times, maybe I should have been a little bit more energetic about meeting him, but both times I just sort of just signed this, take a picture, and walked off. Sting's means a little bit more to me now that he has this WWE run, and he's going to be going into WWE run sooner than later, but Sting's never really been one of my favorite guys, so I just sort of crossed him off the list, got the picture, and just moved on about my day. But thank you. This was a good episode, and I'll see you guys down the road.